And what's the role of the courts in being able to create a check and a balance on this sort of system? Now, we got a hint from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals just this week about their views about executive claims of secrecy and throwing cases out of court. In a case called Mohammed versus Jeppesen that the ACLU brought about the extraordinary rendition program run by the CIA, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said it is not appropriate for the executive to demand that cases be thrown out entirely when they raise such serious questions of law. It is appropriate for the executive to say that particular pieces of evidence may not be presented in court, or may not be presented in open court, or may only be presented just to the judge and not even to the other side. But it is inappropriate to throw these cases out of court entirely. And that's a wonderful decision. I recommend it to you. It's not very long, and it's pretty easy to read. But I think that's a good hint that the courts are not going to stand for this as well. One of the things that happens when you work through the judicial branch, as I do, is that sometimes you feel like you're in slow motion compared to the rest of the country. The executive branch can run on ahead, and Congress can pass these laws, and it takes the courts kind of a while to get to the place where they're able to actually address it. But we're pretty happy with this particular decision, and we hope it augurs for good things as we go forward and try to talk about this. Finally, you're all in the audience. What can you do if you care about these kinds of issues? Let me give you a couple of ideas. The first is I think you need to hold President Obama's feet to the fire. I think it's clear that the president ran on a campaign of transparency and return to the rule of law. I think personally he's interested in this, but I think he's got a lot of things on fire right now, and some of the people who are advising him may not share his positions, and we need to make sure that he pays attention to this too and does the right thing. And even if his heart isn't in it, he still needs to do the right thing, because this is about our rights and our constitutional structure of government. We need to tell him to stop the spying. Not just, we need to make this stop, and we need to have a public discussion about whether we think wholesale dragnet surveillance and wholesale data mining is the right thing for our country or not in this time. Are we going to give up on the Fourth Amendment? Did it have a 200-year run and now we're done with it, or not? He needs to publish the legal memos that supported what they're doing, as with the torture situation. There were a series of legal memos where the government justified to itself what it's doing. We need to see those. I think it will reveal the paucity of legal analysis that supported this. He needs to change his litigation positions. And I think we also need to push Congress to do some investigation. Congress has been asleep at the switch on a lot of these issues, other than a few senators or issuing a couple of subpoenas that go nowhere and that they don't follow up on. I think it's time now that we can begin to have a public discussion about what's been going on to all of our communications. And then finally, my executive director doesn't let me out of the building in San Francisco without a promise to do this. If you think what we're doing is important, we are a small charity. Please join us and support what we're doing, because I only get to do this because people like you think this is important and they join the organization and help support the work that we do. Thank you.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we are listening to Cindy Cohn, Legal Director of the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF. We'll return to Ms. Cohn for our traditional City Club questions in just a few minutes. We encourage you now to formulate questions, and for our speaker, remind you to keep them brief and to the point. We welcome all of you here, and those listening to WCPN 90.3 FM, WCLV, WTAM, or one of the many radio stations across this great country that broadcast the City Club every week. Radio broadcasts of the City Club are made possible through the generous support of Case Western Reserve University. Our television broadcast partners are WVIZ, PBS IdeaStream, and Time Warner Cable. Television broadcasts are supported by National City, which is now a part of PNC, and Cleveland State University. Closed captioning is supported by Nordson Corporation. Our live webcasts are supported by the University of Akron. Wednesday, May 6th, the City Club will host a panel discussion on a First Suburb Consortium mayors moderated by Cuyahoga County Treasurer Jim Rokakis, discussing the middle-class foreclosure crisis. Wednesday, May 27th, the City Club welcomes the Honorable Sherrod Brown, Senator from Ohio, for a forum on health care. For more information about our programs, to make reservations or order a tape of today's program, please call the City Club at 1-888-223-6786 or 216-621-0082, or visit our website, cityclub.org. We're pleased to welcome to our forum today students who are here as part of our City Club student program. Participation of these students is made possible by a generous contribution to the City Club from the First Energy Foundation. With us today are students from North Olmsted High School. Will our student guests please stand and be recognized? And once again, today's forum is in celebration of Law Day. Law Day is celebrated annually on May 1st. Can never forget it. It's my parents' anniversary, so it's a very important date for me. It's a special day focusing on our heritage of liberty under law and how the rule of law makes our democracy possible. This forum is in partnership with the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. Today is also the Glassman Forum on the American Justice System, recognizing a very special gift made by the Glassman family and friends. And also today, we're pleased to welcome guests at tables hosted by the American Civil Liberties Union, Baker Hostetler, Calfee Halter and Griswold, Cleveland Marshall School of Law, the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association, the Legal Aid Society, and Porter Wright, Morris, and Arthur. Now we'd like to return to our speaker for our traditional City Club question and answer period. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests. And holding the microphones today are City Club Assistant Director of Development, Marcella Brown, and Communications and Outreach Coordinator, Deborah Agosti. Now, our first question.
Ms. Cohn, I appreciate your talk today. It was very informative. My question is, well, it has to do with, in my experience, dating back to the late 40s. There was much innuendo in the country, and from my readings lately, I've been finding out that the Roosevelt people tried to throw the Truman people out in '48, but they had already given them power and couldn't. But in the matter of innuendo there, and as how that may lead to, say, wiretapping or something like that, how do you condemn wiretapping based on innuendo?
Well, I think the Fourth Amendment is the right place to look for that. The Fourth Amendment says if you want to wiretap someone, you have to come, you have to explain yourself to a court, you have to say who you want to wiretap, you have to say for how long, and you have to make a showing of probable cause. And if you can't make that showing, you don't get the wiretap. And that, I think, is the right standard. It's the standard we started this country with, and it's the kind of standard that will separate out innuendo from real evidence. And I think that's certainly the right place to start for thinking about how to separate out the wheat from the chaff. The law enforcement needs to be able to wiretap. I'm not opposed to that. But I just think that the elimination of checks and balances is a very dangerous thing.
Ms. Cohn, you spoke about, and you were critical of what termed a retroactive immunity as given by President Obama respecting wiretapping. My question involves the same concept of retroactive immunity which President Obama has apparently given to those who participated personally in what is called the torture of people captured after 9/11. Do you find that is are you equally critical of that? Do you find that giving retroactive immunity to those people, while the Attorney General is still investigating the question of whether or not there'll be a prosecution brought of the superiors who issued those memoranda, but do you find that kind of retroactive immunity as being a danger to civil rights and somewhat similar to the kind of retroactive immunity you referred to earlier?
I think so. I mean, I'm a tech lawyer, so I don't know the ins and outs of the torture thing, but any more than anybody else who reads the paper. But I do think the rule of law is important, and I think the idea that you would have, and I do international human rights as well, and there's an idea in international human rights law against impunity. The idea that there are no consequences for breaking the law if you're an important enough person.